Okay, folks, this is what I call my Mexican plum bed. And that's a Mexican plum. Let's get up on these leaves. There you go. Mexican plum. Lovely. It covers from about there all the way over to that elbow bush privet hedge. On the other side of that is my first garden bed. Eventually I'll have stuff growing all up under the privet and all down this hill. This hill, matter of fact, that direction is north. So it's facing west northwest maybe. Not optimal for growing. Plus it's on the side of a hill. I don't know if it's coming out on camera, but where I'm standing versus that little green T-post that I'm pointing at is about 5 feet in elevation. So side of a hill, water running off super fast, not a lot of water soaking in, not getting a lot of sun from optimal directions, but it's what I have. It's the space that I have, so that's what we got going on here. To cover an inventory is going to be quite easy in terms of human edible crops. You've got Mexican plum, I've got one dwarf mulberry, and a thornless blackberry. Now, outside of this garden bed, right across the walking trail, is wild strawberry. Everything else is going to be, in this section, going to be in this garden bed. So, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the rant, that's about all the crops you're going to see in here. I am going to talk about other things. For instance, why is this Mexican plum, why does it look so much better than this one? Some of it is possibly genetics. I sourced this Mexican plum and that beautiful one, and you probably can't see it from here. I'll go down and get a shot of it for you so you can see the difference. This one, right there, see it? You getting taller? Yeah, right about there. It's about 5 foot tall, that Mexican plum. Those three were grown from seed. The rest of them are a hodgepodge of being ordered from places, different places, to test out what would grow best. And the one that won was the one that I walked around and hiked and collected seeds from a local specimen. What a shock, right? Although maybe I have done something from a gardening perspective that messed up the other trees. Quite possible, and I'll discuss that. Non-edible stuff. Little bluestem. I have actually quite a bit of that on this part of the property. I've covered this in a different video, the desmanthus. And I don't think I could ever grow enough of that to actually create enough livestock feed, but I mentioned in another video how I had chickens. I'm going to get back into livestock. What I'm going to be getting back into is bobwhite quail. I'm a licensed game bird breeder, and I used to raise bobwhite quail, which are the native quail to this area. So that's probably going to be what I raise, but I'm trying to figure out how to feed them. I don't really want to have to buy a lot of supplemental feed. I don't really want to buy a lot of supplemental inputs of any kind for any type of agricultural or horticultural pursuit. So I don't think it's really realistic to grow all their feed, but maybe I can find a way to before I get them, to grow enough to put a dent into it. And that particular plant, the desmanthus, might be part of the solution. We'll see. Another thing you'll see are all these little cedar trees. Well, ash juniper. You'll see a couple of stumps. Those are 2 trees I tried to keep alive, but they died. And out of this entire section, those are the only 2 trees I killed to put everything in. I don't think it's terrible to lose 2 trees to put in 10 trees, but and 9 of those are completely native. But hopefully you don't judge me too harshly for that. There's other native grasses here that are not bluestem. There's bear grass and some other bunch grasses that I haven't identified, or I have identified, but I don't know them offhand from memory. There's plenty of cedar sedge, which I covered in another video. Right there, you see that green, those little green thin leaves are cedar sedge. Got oak and elm sprouts, little saplings. Of course, you've seen the cedar saplings. And I'm just going to keep cutting these cedars down. I also got elbow bush in here. Elbow bush and cedar. I want to keep them short until the Mexican plums get tall enough that they have a competitive advantage. And then I'm probably going to let it all go again, maybe. And you got these two cedar trees, which I've been trying to dwarf. They were much taller. You can see, you got the bud back here, but as these cedar trees get older, they're more stubborn in where they'll send bud back. So I had some down here, and it died. And that's because the tree is going to put its energy into the green that you have the highest up, that gets the most sun. So it's going to, when in a drought condition, it's going to say, well, I'm going to sacrifice this bud back down here, which gets less sunlight, than this up here. And this makes me more food. So same with this tree. You can see the tree behind it. See, it's a good example of a tree budding back. You got this guy. So you get the first bud back here, and you can see it's topped out there. So I can actually make this much shorter and keep the tree alive. And of course, another one next to it. And we have a willow. This is not the willow in the inconvenient location, although it is an inconvenient location. But I'm just going to leave this willow here. You can see how I've pushed them down and just kind of bend them around where I want them to go to keep them out of the way of the Mexican plums until they get tall enough to have a competitive advantage. These Mexican plums will get 25 foot tall when they're fully mature, so I'm not really worried about them being tall enough once they have that competitive advantage. Okay, so let's see if I'm missing anything here. All right, on the Mexican plum. So I think I mentioned the genetics that these that I've gotten in county. Some of these were bought, the rest of them were bought from various nurseries. This one was put in this year, and this one was put in this year. One of these two actually may be from seed. I'll have to go see what I've written down. But from seed that I collected locally. But this one right here was doing pretty good until about a month ago, and then died back. And then we got rain, and now it's sending up new shoots. On all these little Mexican plums that are undersized, all these other ones remaining. So we have this guy, we have this one. And yes, I still have the fences around them because they're short, and I don't want Mr. Rabbit to come and destroy them. Although I probably should let him. And another one there, another Mexican plum. Behind this Mexican plum, right there, you see your thornless blackberry. So these Mexican plums that are all small, when I planted them, I got some bare root seedlings, and I did not enrich the soil at all. I just put them straight into the native soil. And you can see how they aren't doing nearly as well. One or two of these actually got cut by a rabbit, so then you can see the fencing around them. And I also hindered the growth. This particular tree was actually above the fence. It was probably about 3 foot tall. And it was sitting around the end of May, beginning of June, and it still hadn't leafed out for the spring. So I was thinking, well, it must have died. You know, it must have dried up during the winter or something, got a disease or whatever, and died. So what I did was I cut the trunk back short, but I left it to remind me to backfill it and plant it with one of my potted Mexican plums. And shortly after I did that, it started leafing out. So it's just a late bloomer. That one, and all of them, really. This one, and that one, and this one. I cut them all thinking they were dead, and they all leafed out shortly after. Just eliminating a couple years of growth by snipping it like that, like a fool. And now I'm in a situation where I need to determine whether or not I should just rip them out, maybe pot them up if I can keep them alive, and backfill them with a more mature specimen. So that way, not only can they get light faster and grow faster, but then I get fruit faster, and I can get tree starts faster. We'll see what I do. It'll be next spring before I make any changes, if I make any changes at all. This particular tree I'm filming was completely green before the rain 2 weeks ago. Completely green. Wonderful. Loved it. We got rain, and now you can see 2/3 of it is dead. And what's left, it doesn't look like it's doing too well. So, and this actually used to be the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful Mexican plums I had in this area, behind the ones grown from seed. So, this is one of my favorite garden beds. You can see another little baby bluestem here, right there. And the Mexican plum is definitely a tree that is native that I really want to have fairly prolific on this property. So I've been, putting a lot of attention into this bed. Now, we are on the side of a hill. And if you look, these trees are actually planted in some level of a almost looks like there's a purposeful configuration here. You see, we have these trees follow in a line with this tree here, and then those two, they have this tree up at the top, this tree in a semicircle. So what I'm trying to point out is that I am going to put little miniature swales all the way down this hill. And these trees are already planted in the perfect position to not interfere with where I'm going to put these swales. And it will just simply be swaled all the way down to behind this tree. And then I'm going to put a decent sized swale here where that log is laying on the ground, marking where it's going to be. And then behind that, you see this log jam is going to be the last swale on this section of the yard. Doing all that, hopefully I'll be able to capture a lot of water, and this side of the hill won't be so dry. But with putting in swales, the challenge I've had, and what you're looking at right now, is the uncultivated section of my yard. I remove the native species, and I largely leave it to its own devices. Putting in swales in an existing forest is not an easy operation if you're not really wanting to knock out a bunch of trees. If you want to get heavy machinery in there, you're going to be killing some trees to put in your swales. In a small yard, if you like your trees, you don't want to do that because you don't have a ton. If I had acres and acres and acres, that wouldn't be a big deal, really. But having a small yard and wanting to put in swales, you're going to end up getting rid of a good amount of your trees just to do so. And I'm not really prepared to do that. And then climbing on your hands and knees and thinking that you're going to be able to dig in completely rocky soil with a pickaxe while you're doing it, it's not going to work either. So probably the only place I'll be able to put swales will be in a location like this where I've cleared out the existing canopy. The trees are still alive, they're just reduced in size to give these deciduous trees a chance to become the dominant canopy. And while that process is taking place is the good time to get in and dig those swales. So I doubt I'm going to be putting any swales in there. So, but definitely going to be putting some in here and developing this out further. So hopefully it will just get better and better as time goes on. But yeah, that's my Mexican plums. And I hope you enjoyed this little area as much as I did.